I'm back anyway. Where are we? Okay. Come on. What? Drive. Sometimes won't drive. And that's better. What? No one's moving it? Yeah, great. Oh. Let's go. Here. And then let's go here. Who's this? Oh man, who playing this? Who planned this plane? Black Hawk community. Okay. Okay. I hope it's with me. We'll go here. Wait, that house is here. It's just never seen this before. I'm not planning to do it, maybe later. No. Ah, many. Money? Yes. Okay, bye. Yeah. I've been. Okay. Okay. No. I'm supposed. Oh look. You can control it, okay? Let's go here. Okay. Let's return. We're doing the hole. Now and great, and I got lost. And I was That place we had a different place than this Brookhaven boring stuff. Well, yes, I'm doing a video.
You're going to do this?
Yes. It's Roblox. Brookhaven.
So, tomorrow we'll go to school again.
Okay. I'm okay with it. Come on. Do I know where I'm going? Wait, that's my house. Yes, this is my house. From there. Who's there? Huh? Who's want to being attacked? Can be here. Oh, I can shoot them if they know this part. That gray, you know that gray wall, right? Let me tell you that that's part of my house. I will tell them that's my property. YOLO, YOLO. YOLO. Go away, go away, go away from this building. I can have a helicopter. Helicopter. Can I have a helicopter? Can a small were trying to do me, huh? Only? You gotta be kidding me. This game is trash, man, but I like the houses. The only thing I like is houses in this game. Wait, let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 layers of a house. Can I see? Go away, go away, go away. Anyway guys, so hope this is just video today. I hope you subscribe, like, and see you guys in the next video. And for a bonus, go to my TikTok account and follow there and watch my TikTok videos. Bye. And also subscribe, like, and comment.
China's population imbalance between East and West has remained pretty much constant throughout. And it's been constant for thousands of years even before that. And nobody has ever been able to solve it. So, why has this demographic problem existed throughout time? Well, there's many reasons why, but let's take a look at China's geography first. The easy answer is to simply say that the land east of the Hu Line is simply better suited for civilization and for sustaining larger populations. Because it is. You've got vast open plains in the north that are flat, warm, receive tons of rainfall, and are easy to farm and develop, with 2 of Earth's largest rivers flowing across them. And you've got warm, gentle, rolling plains hills in the south that receive even more rainfall than the north does. Directly adjacent to these plains are a nearly unbroken chain of mountains that run completely north to south, save for a very tiny corridor here along the Yangtze River that leads into the Sichuan Basin. A huge, hidden, flat field that's completely surrounded by mountains on all sides and separated by them from the rest of China's flat, plain lands. Unsurprisingly, when looking at a side-by-side map of China's terrain and China's population density, the flatlands of the north, south, and the Sichuan Basin in the center are where nearly the entirety of China's population resides. Because flat plains and basins are where it's naturally the easiest to build farms, develop cities, and grow populations on that eventually evolve into civilizations, kingdoms, and empires. The simple reality is that the plains and flatlands to the east of the line are some of the greatest and richest agricultural land that's found anywhere on the planet, while the land to the west of the line is literally the most inhospitable and hostile environment found anywhere on the planet outside of Antarctica or Greenland. In some places, this area is even more hostile to human life than the Sahara Desert. The land here is entirely covered with high mountains and vast dry deserts, which aren't exactly the most fruitful lands for developing civilization upon to begin with, but their environments are even worse than what it seems. The massive Himalayas in the south are the highest mountain chain in the world, and they cast a literal shadow that extends well across the Tibetan Plateau, Gobi, and Taklamakan deserts that blocks all of these regions from receiving the substantial amounts of rainfall that China's east receives. Air with clouds full of rain bring wet monsoons from the Indian Ocean that dump enormous amounts of water across India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, but the high mountains of the Himalayas block these clouds from climbing above and beyond them like a harsh weather border wall. Thus, rainfall rarely ever gets through, and it makes the areas beyond some of the driest found anywhere on the planet, which makes traditional agriculture across the plateau and the deserts impossible. And if it wasn't for the lack of rainfall making civilization impossible, it would be the temperatures. The long-range shadow cast by the Himalayas is what created both the Taklamakan and Gobi deserts, but their location so close to Siberia leads to wild temperature variations. Harsh, cold winds blowing in from the Arctic can send temperatures in the deserts during wintertime plunging to as low as minus 40 Celsius. And during the summertime, they can skyrocket up to as high as 45 Celsius. Temperatures within the deserts can literally change by as much as 35 degrees Celsius within just a single 24-hour period. And to make matters even worse, the deserts are expanding. Just like the nomadic conquerors who have come roaring out from these lands for thousands of years to conquer and pillage China's agricultural land, the sands of the deserts themselves are now taking their own turn at a rate of nearly 3,600 square kilometers every single year. What that means is that roughly every decade, the sands of the Gobi alone are conquering nearly 1 Taiwan worth of agricultural land from China. The nearby Taklamakan Desert is located within an area known as the Tarim Basin, with brutal temperatures
Okay,
during
they
both
don't
summer
chase
and
me.
winter, while also being almost entirely absent of water and surrounded by high mountains on all sides. This region is not only incredibly difficult to reach, but it's incredibly difficult to survive in once you even get there. As a result, the Korean Basin is believed to have been the final place on the entire Asian continent that was settled by humans, potentially only as recently as about 1800 BCE, many centuries after the ancient Egyptians constructed the Great Pyramid at Giza. As a result of this terrible geography, the lands west of the Hu Line within China have pretty much always been essentially a barren wasteland hostile to nearly all human life that's never been able to support much more than nomadic herders, while the land east of the line became the birthplace and cradle of Chinese civilization, and where there are people, more will follow and follow throughout time. So that's the reason why throughout the eons, China's confounding population disparity has persisted. But all of that kind of begs another question. If more than half of China's land is so worthless, why does China even control all of it in the first place? The answer is largely because land isn't really so worthless as it may seem from only looking at one single kind of map. To start with, Tibet might only have a population of less than 4 million people, but it's not the people that's important here to China. It's the water and the location. Owing to the high elevation that towers above the rest of the world, Tibet is home to tens of thousands of glaciers that collectively contain the world's third largest storage site of fresh water after Antarctica and Greenland. This has led many to label Tibet as the third pole of the Earth. But it's not just glaciers. Tibet is also referred to as the water tower of Asia because many of the world's largest rivers begin across the plateau, including both the Yellow and Yangtze, Indus, Mekong, Brahmaputra, and Gangara rivers. These rivers flow from the almost uninhabited and uninhabitable Tibetan plateau down to support hundreds of millions of people downstream across Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and, of course, China itself. The control of Tibet means the control of the sources for all of these rivers, and that means the control of the drinking water for hundreds of millions of people that powers the civilizations from India to China. Therefore, from the Chinese perspective, in order to ensure a continuous and uninterrupted supply of water to her two most critically important rivers, and to control the world's third largest source of fresh water to secure a future where fresh water may be more difficult to come by, the control of Tibet is an imperative policy to guarantee future security of the state, regardless of the optics that an invasion and occupation of the territory has had for decades now. That explains Tibet fairly well, but what about the vast deserts of the Northwest? Chinese civilizations have sought to dominate these inhospitable lands for thousands of years now for two massively important reasons. The presence of nomads who liked to raid China's prosperous core in the east, and lucrative trade flowing to the west. First of all, China's geography around her rich eastern plains that constitute her core largely guarantees easy security from invaders in nearly every direction. To the east and the south is the ocean, while to the west and northwest are the inhospitable mountains and deserts that stretch for thousands of kilometers. There are only two historical weak points to this natural armor here and here. Here, the core central plain of Chinese civilization stretches uninterrupted from beyond the rich Yellow River Valley into the steppes of Manchuria and Central Asia, without any natural barriers to slow them down. The various nomadic steppe hordes like the Mongols, the Tatars, the Huns, and many others who lived across these steppes throughout history on their horses could always launch raids or conquests into the richer lands of China for loot and plunder. For thousands of years across numerous Chinese dynasties and even more numerous invaders, attempts were made to plug up this gap with fortifications and walls that over time eventually evolved into what we know today as the Great Wall of China. The other weak point in China's armor was much smaller and located across a tiny strip of land here known as the He Corridor. This is an extremely narrow stretch of land through the western wastelands that's fairly easy to traverse across because it's relatively flat and dotted by oases throughout, which pretty much acted almost like ancient gas stations for travelers and invaders
look at
alike
that
who were moving across it.
crusher.
Flanked by mountains to the north and south and surrounded
Yes,
by some of the world's
finally.
most inhospitable environments,
Yeah.
the corridor acts like a natural pass that leads for nearly 1,000
I'm not
kilometers
living
directly
for
from
this.
China's rich core central plain straight to the Tarim Basin
Yeah.
and Central Asia in the west.
Okay.
For millennia, steppe nomads from Central Asia could use the Hashi corridor almost like a funnel or a highway to
Why?
rapidly transport themselves and their horse armies directly into the core open plain of
Why?
Central Chinese civilization, which gave Chinese states a difficult conundrum. Was it cheaper to bribe the nomads to halt their raids or to lead military campaigns into the west to stop them? During the Tang Dynasty of the 7th century, they decided that military campaigns were cheaper, and through numerous invasions and conquests, expanded Tang Chinese dominion across the corridor and deep into the Tarim Basin, with the objectives of subduing and neutralizing the nomads, and of securing the vital Silk Road trade route. Along with being a highway for invaders across both directions, the Hashi corridor served as a vital transportation route for trade caravans and merchants, and was the most important trade route in northwest China. Across this route, traders were linked directly between the rich industrial and agricultural heartland of China and the Islamic civilizations of Central and Western Asia, which from there linked directly to the civilizations of Europe. Trade across the corridor made China rich, while bandit raids upon it from the surrounding wastelands interrupted that wealth. And so, in order to ensure that the trade continued to flow reliably and to halt the incursions of nomads, China steadily expanded her dominion across it and towards the west. It also doesn't hurt that today, the area around the Tarim Basin is pretty rich with oil. Throughout the 80s and 90s, the China National Petroleum Corporation discovered 26 oil and gas-bearing structures across the basin that are estimated to contain approximately 16 billion tons of oil and gas reserves. Today, the basin supplies more than a fifth of China's oil supply and is by far the most significant energy base that China possesses. So those are the many reasons why, over the past many thousands of years, Chinese civilization has come to expand from her cradle in the east across the more inhospitable wastelands of the west. But there's another factor that the Hu line divides China by: ethnicity. Overall, China is largely very ethnically homogeneous, with more than 92% of the population being Han Chinese. However, nearly the entirety of the Han Chinese population lives to the east of the Hu line, while the vast majority of the remaining 8% that make up China's various ethnic minorities live to the west of the line, largely in the wastelands, including the Tibetans in the southwest and the Uyghurs around the Tarim Basin in the northwest. GDP per capita is 15% lower on average to the west of the line amongst China's ethnic minorities than it is to the more industrialized east among the ethnic Han. These are largely the reasons why all of China simply consists of a single gigantic time zone, the single widest and largest in the world, which dictates that the time from Manchuria to the border of Afghanistan is all one and the same. Because to Beijing, the 1.3 billion ethnic Han Chinese, who largely live across the same natural time zone in the industrialized East, are more important than the 84 million mostly non-Han Chinese who live across the sparse and wider West. All of this, however, poses a serious internal problem for the Chinese state to cope with. Since they are culturally and economically separated from the East, and even separated by literal time, the Tibetans and the Uyghurs have each sustained widespread opposition to China's centralized authority back in the East. And China often responds to this opposition with harsh and heavy repression. For thousands of years, China has enacted its own version of westward expansion and manifest destiny across the central highlands and deserts of Asia. And now, in the modern age, millions of Han are moving from the East and settling the West across the Hu line. In the name of economic development, China is aiming to finally develop its western half with the aid of modern technology. But there are extensive fears among the Tibetans, the Uyghurs, and others that their ancient ways of life and even their very cultures are being bulldozed over in the same name of this development. In the end, how much of Western China's culture and diversity will be sacrificed in the age-old thousands-years quest of finally developing the West? Nobody knows, and almost nobody has high hopes. Last year, around when COVID was just beginning, I decided to stop ordering takeout. I was the kind of person who was just so busy that I ordered food almost every single day. But eventually, I realized just how expensive and unhealthy this was. But since I was still tight on time, I wanted a relatively easy way to make dinner at the end of the day that wasn't just the same old frozen pizza or chicken nuggets. And so I found HelloFresh. I've now been using them for about a year and a half, and I even have the dozens and dozens of recipe cards here to prove it. But if you don't know what they are, HelloFresh sends you a box each week with all the fresh ingredients you need to make the meals you selected the previous week. And it all comes in the exact right quantities, which cuts down both on prep and shopping time by quite a lot. That way, you go straight to cooking, like I did with this creamy spinach ravioli, which is one of my favorite meals of theirs. It also turns out that HelloFresh is a more sustainable meals option, since research has found that their carbon footprint is 25% lower than meals from grocery store ingredients. Partially since it cuts down on food waste by only sending you the exact quantities that you need. Also, getting all these options means that I tend to try types of food that I wouldn't normally. In fact, they offer so many different and genuinely great vegetarian options that I've been able to easily adapt to a vegetarian-only diet for the past couple of months. But regardless if that's what you want to try or not, HelloFresh is a great way to increase variety at dinner time. Best of all though, when you click the button that's on your screen right now and visit HelloFresh.com and use the code RealLifeLore14, you'll get 14 meals for free, including free shipping, and you'll also be greatly supporting Real Life Lore while you're at it. It's such a huge win-win, so please do check them out, and as always, thank you for watching.
Finally.
What are you?
I'm at one of the doors. I'm coming safe outside.
Balloons could get much higher than traditional cell towers. Each one was capable of providing a 25-mile radius of people on the ground with 3G speeds. And because they were above the clouds, they could be powered entirely by solar energy. But sadly, just this year, Alphabet announced that having burnt through $1 billion, Loon had popped. Mostly for regulatory reasons. Some countries had no problem at all allowing all these internet balloons in their airspace, but other countries told them to go do one, and so this hurt the efficiency of the project. It meant that instead of having a whole interconnected web of balloons everywhere that could all communicate and send signals between them to wherever needed, we'd end up having one separated cluster of balloons over here, one of them over here, one of them over here, and at that point, you might as well just manually build the infrastructure. So, I'm giving this one a 7 out of 10 fail. Inflated because of A, how much money was lost, and also B, how much Alphabet and Google were talking of this project. Alright. Number 3 is quite possibly the largest social media blunder to date. So, what happened was, back in 2014, hundreds of thousands of Americans were served a quiz. It asked them questions about their behavior and psychology, as well as that of their friends, and it made people log into their Facebook accounts to submit that quiz. What these people didn't realize, though, is that by doing so, they were basically allowing someone to combine that behavioral data from their quiz with their personal info from their Facebook page, including their photos, into a complete psychometric profile of themselves, and every other person connected to them. Through a few 100,000 people taking this quiz, a personality profile could be built for every single living American. But what made it so much worse was that this data was then given to a data mining firm called Cambridge Analytica, who were at the time working on Donald Trump's campaign for president. And they used this extra info about people to target tailored political advertising to them. Things like what kind of messaging they would respond to, and how many times they need to see that messaging so that they would end up voting the way that Cambridge Analytica wanted them to. This was horrific news for Facebook, because even though they weren't the ones doing the bad thing, it was their platform that let it happen. It was their responsibility to make sure that user data was protected. They didn't do that, and as a consequence were slapped with one of the biggest fines in history for misconduct at $5 billion. Oh yeah, and a worldwide trending campaign to delete Facebook. You know what they say, all press is good press. Unless you're Facebook. 8 out of 10 fail. Alright, number 2 revolves around a guy called Billy McFarlane, who, through a semi-successful startup company, managed to network with some pretty powerful people. And one day him and a few of those people had an idea. To create a music festival, 2 weeks of just pure luxury on a private island with endless gourmet food, luxury villas, white beaches, and a guest list full of celebrities. they paid hundreds of influencers to talk up the so-called Fire Festival, including people like Kendall Jenner and Bella Hadid, and it wasn't long before the entire $1,000, to be not normally something that money can even buy. So, to the people who had the money, it's worth it. But what had happened here was that all the promises were made and tickets sold before Billy and team had actually thought about costs. And when they did that, they realized that they didn't have enough. Because yes, while the top-end tickets were extortionate, in trying to get the numbers up, they sold the majority of them at closer to $1,000. So, they couldn't build people luxury villas. People arrived on the island only to realize that they had a tent. There was no food. People were literally starving. And so the staff decided to distract them from this fact by shoving bottles of tequila down their throats. But that is literally a recipe for casualties. Every single one of the major music appearances they told people would be there were complete no-shows. And some of the ones on the list hadn't even confirmed in the first place. This private island was actually the empty space behind a bunch of hotels on a public island. And they didn't tell people whose tent was whose. So people arrived expecting luxury, but actually ended up having a free-for-all and needing to steal mattresses to make sure that they had a place to sleep. This was a war zone. Plus, on top of all of that, people were instructed to put all of their money onto this fire bracelet because it was going to be a cashless festival. Except when people arrived, they realized that because the festival was off, there was no one on the island who was willing to take payment from it. And there was no way to get the money off. By every metric, this was a horrific experience for people. But justice was served with a $100 million class action lawsuit against Billy. And then another lawsuit. And then 7 more lawsuits. Then he was charged for fraud. And given 6 years in prison. 8 out of 10. Now, just before fail number 1, do remember that this is only one of like 7 different tech fails videos. So if your favorite fail isn't in this one, it might well be on those ones, and I'll leave them linked from here. So, number 1 is the UK's response to COVID. I mean, deadly serious. So, the government had this idea that national lockdowns are terrible for the economy. True. So, what we're going to do is develop a test and trace app that can enforce individual lockdowns, that can keep track of exactly who has COVID and therefore who needs to isolate because they've been in contact with those people. Oh, that sounds like a good idea. How much are you going to spend on that? £22 billion. Excuse me? To give you some perspective, £22 billion is enough money to buy not 1, but 2 PlayStation 5s for every single house in the country. It could provide 1.1 million jobs, or according to the crisis charity, is twice as much money needed to end homelessness. But do you want to know what the funny part is? They decided partway through development that 22 billion wasn't enough, and so they've already burnt through 37. And their app has not done its one and only job to prevent another national lockdown. We've already had 2 more since it started. It's a completely broken system. The goal was to log when someone was identified to have COVID, and then using a smartphone notification, instantly alert that person and everyone around them to stay in their homes. But, at best, this app is only reaching about 50% of the contacts of the person who has COVID. So, half of them are being told to isolate, and half of these people are almost being reassured that actually they are in fact fine, when they're not. Not only that, but the process is so drawn out that it's on average taking a week after someone becomes infectious for their app to tell them that they should be isolating, which is far too late, because at that point, they could well have infected tens more people, and they could well have been infectious for so long that they're not infectious anymore. But it's that point at which they're being told to stay at home. But on top of all of that, the data being fed to the app, the backbone of this operation, is